The sun over Riverfront Park felt like a warm blanket, a stark contrast to the ice-cold Sauvignon Blanc in my hand. Spokane shimmered under a late summer haze, the Spokane River moving slow and indifferent beneath the bridge. Then my phone shattered the peace. It was Megan. She wasn't just crying, she was shrieking. "They're calling the police," she screamed. "Strangers, they're in my condo." I didn't need to ask to know exactly what she'd done. She had used the emergency key, the one strictly for fires or floods, to move herself and her boyfriend into a property I sold 2 weeks ago. I didn't gasp, I didn't apologize, I just took a slow sip of my wine. Before I tell you how my family tried to hijack my life from across state lines, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. I like knowing who's part of this community. To understand why I didn't scream, why my pulse stayed steady, you have to understand where I came from. You have to understand the architecture of guilt I lived inside for 33 years in Tacoma. The rain there didn't just fall from the sky, it soaked into the drywall of my life, making everything heavy, damp, and impossible to move. My parents, Douglas and Karen Whitmore, didn't build a home on love. They built a structure based on utility. In their blueprint, I wasn't a daughter, I was a load-bearing wall. My job was to stand there, silent and sturdy, holding up the roof so my younger sister Megan could dance in the living room without getting wet. They called it family duty. I called it a long con. The evidence wasn't subtle. It was parked in the driveway. On Megan's 16th birthday, she received a brand new compact SUV. I remember the price because I saw the paperwork on the kitchen counter while I was making my own lunch. $38,000. When I turned 16, Douglas handed me a bus schedule and a lecture about responsibility and carbon footprints. He called it character building. The imbalance didn't stop at cars. It was baked into every decision they made. For Megan, there were private tutors, SAT prep courses, unpaid internships pulled from favors, and eventually tuition for a private college that totaled over $200,000. They paid every cent. They said they were investing in her potential. For me, they said they were investing in my resilience. I worked 3 jobs through college. I stocked shelves overnight, slept 4 hours, and went straight to class. When I graduated with honors and 0 financial help, they didn't praise my discipline. They praised the fact that I was low maintenance. That was their favorite description of me. Claire doesn't need much. Claire's easy. Claire will figure it out. They were right. I didn't need them, but they desperately needed me. Over time, I became a product strategist, a career built on analyzing behavior and optimizing broken systems. Naturally, I turned that lens inward. I realized I wasn't a person to my parents. I was a contingency plan. I was the safety net designed to catch Megan whenever she inevitably fell. That realization brings us to the condo, my condo. I bought it 2 years ago in downtown Tacoma, in a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a partial view of Commencement Bay. It cost every bonus and stock payout I'd earned in a decade of grinding. I bought it as a sanctuary, but the moment my parents walked in for the housewarming, I saw it in their eyes. They weren't seeing my home, they were evaluating an asset. Karen ran her hand across the quartz countertop and said, "This is a lot of space for one person, Claire. Almost wasteful, don't you think?" Douglas stepped onto the balcony, nodded once, and said, "This is a smart investment. Good to know this stays in the family." They didn't see my name on the deed. They saw a future crash pad for Megan when her roommates annoyed her. They saw a liquidation option if Douglas's consulting firm had a bad year. They saw something they could access whenever the golden child was hungry. So when the job offer from Spokane came through, I knew exactly what would happen. I knew if that condo sat empty for even a month, they would occupy it. They would guilt me into letting Megan house sit, and within a week she'd be redecorating. That's when I understood something crucial. The guilt I carried wasn't natural. It was engineered, brick by expensive brick. And there's only one way to escape a cage that strong. You don't unlock the door, you demolish the building. The Spokane offer wasn't just a career move, it was a lifeline. But my first reaction wasn't excitement, it was panic. Who would pay Megan's rent if I left? Who would troubleshoot my parents' tech problems? Who would handle the emergencies? That panic was the warning sign. Sitting at my desk, staring at gray clouds pressing against the windows, I ran the simulation. My competence hadn't saved my family, it had crippled them. By fixing every crisis, paying every bill, smoothing every mess, I had created a vacuum of competence. I had made it so easy for them to be helpless that they forgot how to survive. Megan wasn't just entitled, she was underdeveloped. My parents weren't just dependent, they were enablers who had outsourced adulthood to their eldest daughter. If I announced my move, the pressure would be immediate. They'd ask me to keep the condo, just in case, just until Megan gets back on her feet. And I knew myself well enough to know I'd cave. So I made a choice. I chose silence. A discreet realtor handled the sale off-market. My life went into boxes late at night, disguised as routine decluttering. When my parents asked what I planned to do with the condo while I was away, the lie slid out easily over Sunday dinner. I hired a management company, I said. Strict lease, corporate tenants, no personal access. It's all handled. Long-term lease, no personal access. My mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. A management company? That feels so impersonal, Claire. Strangers in your home. It covers the mortgage, I said, keeping my voice flat. 2 weeks before my move, I sat across from the Harrisons at a long oak conference table. Young couple, newly married, both civil engineers. They talked about where they'd put the crib, how they'd host Thanksgiving. They saw a future there. I signed the papers, slid the keys across the table, and felt a physical weight lift from my chest. It wasn't just a sale, it was an amputation. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Megan. I boarded the plane to Spokane with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket, leaving behind a place that no longer belonged to me. I thought I had outsmarted them. I thought I had finally escaped the vacuum. I didn't realize how aggressively it would try to refill itself. I sat by the river when my phone rang again. Megan's screaming had dissolved into frantic sobs. My parents had driven her to the condo. They had unlocked the door. They had helped her carry boxes into a home that wasn't hers. They ignored my story about tenants not because they knew it was false, but because they didn't care if it was true. In their world, my property was family property. My boundaries were optional. I called Ethan Harrison. My hand trembled not from fear, but from a cold, focused anger. He answered immediately. "Claire, thank God. Your sister is screaming at my wife that this is her house. The police are on the way." "Let them come," I said. "Put me on speaker." I heard the shuffle, then Megan's voice, sharp and panicked. "You can't kick me out. Mom and Dad said I could stay here. Claire said it was fine." "I never said that." Megan. The silence was immediate. "Claire," she whispered, "tell them. Mom and Dad said—" "Mom and Dad don't own that condo. I did, and I sold it. You're trespassing." I heard a gasp, sirens in the distance. "Ethan," I said, "please tell the officer I've confirmed the sale and that no one in my family has permission to be there. If she refuses to leave, I support pressing charges." "You can't do this," Megan shrieked. "They'll kill you." "They can try." I spent 20 minutes coordinating my sister's removal from a different city. I listened as the officer arrived, reviewed the deed I emailed, and gave her 2 options: leave willingly or leave in cuffs. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I ordered another drink. The sun slid lower over the river, gold stretching across the water. My chest felt light, like a bridge had finally burned behind me. Then my phone lit up again. Incoming video call. Dad. I accepted. Douglas and Karen sat rigidly on their beige sectional. Megan was wedged between them, clutching tissues like evidence. Douglas leaned forward, his face filling the screen. "We demand an explanation." "I think you're confused," I said calmly. "I'm not the one who broke into someone else's home." "Don't play games," Karen snapped. "You set her up. You humiliated your sister. Do you know she left in a police car?" "Traumatic," I repeated. "Traumatic is having strangers break into your home. Megan is lucky charges weren't filed." "That was my decision." "You should have told us," Megan wailed. "You knew I needed a place." "This wasn't about you," I said. "Not everything is." "We're family," Douglas shouted. "Family shares resources. That condo was a safety net. You had a responsibility." I looked at them closely. They weren't hurt. They were furious their resource was gone. "I don't owe you that house. I don't owe you notice. And I don't owe you an apology. What I do owe is an invoice." "An invoice?" Karen gasped. "For the emergency locksmith, the professional cleaners, and the hotel I just booked for Megan. That's the last financial support you'll ever get from me." "You wouldn't dare," Douglas growled. "Check your email. I just sent it. Pay it or explain to the Harrisons why you won't. Goodbye." I ended the call. My hands shook with adrenaline. I had just fired my parents. I thought that was the end. Then my email chimed. It was from my former manager in Tacoma. Urgent. Claire, we need to talk. The new owners of your condo, Ethan Harrison, is the COO of Northline Logistics, our biggest client, and your father's biggest client. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just personal anymore. This was professional fallout. Megan hadn't just trespassed. She detonated my father's livelihood, and the blast radius was expanding. And my family was standing at ground zero. Northline Logistics wasn't just a contract. It was 40% of my father's consulting firm's revenue. Douglas had spent over a decade cultivating that relationship. Golf outings, holiday gifts, private dinners, and now his daughter had been escorted out of that executive's home by police. My phone rang again. Dad. I stared at the screen, aware of the inversion happening in real time. For 33 years, I had been the one asking for permission. Now, I held the only leverage left. I answered. Claire. His voice cracked. The confidence was gone. Ethan called. He's pulling the account. He said he can't trust a firm whose family doesn't respect boundaries or property law. I'm sorry to hear that, Dad. You have to fix this, he begged. Write him a letter. Say it was a misunderstanding. Say you gave Megan permission and forgot to clarify. Take the blame. If we lose this account, the firm collapses. I listened to his breathing, uneven and frantic. He was asking me to lie, to torch my own credibility, to absorb consequences that weren't mine, to keep him warm while I burned. For a moment, the old reflex stirred. It's just a letter. It would save them. Then I thought about the vacuum of competence. If I fixed this, they'd never change. They'd just wait for the next crisis. Dad, I said quietly, do you remember when I was 12 and I asked for money for a science project and you told me failure builds character? This is different, he pleaded. No, it isn't. I won't lie for you. I won't take responsibility for Megan's crime or your enabling. This is what happens when you treat people like resources instead of humans. You lose them. You're selfish, he snapped, anger bleeding back in. Yes, I said, I am, and I'm finally protecting myself. I hung up. Then I blocked his number. I blocked my mother. I blocked Megan. I sat by the river as dusk settled, aware of the finality. I had severed my entire family, and I had never felt more alive. 6 months passed, 6 months of silence. I didn't block them out of spite. I blocked them to preserve the peace I'd built. Through a former colleague, I learned the fallout. Northline didn't just leave. Ethan told his network why. In business, trust is currency, and Douglas had proven he couldn't safeguard his own house, let alone a client's. The firm downsized severely, and with the family's safety net gone, the Megan subsidy dried up. Last week, I saw a social media update from a cousin. Megan has a job now, a real one, receptionist at a dental clinic in Yakima. It isn't glamorous. It isn't what she thought she deserved, but it's hers. The vacuum of competence worked. By stepping away, I forced them to stand on their own. It wasn't cruelty, it was necessity. They're struggling, they probably hate me, but they're functioning without feeding on me. I sit now at a small metal table near the river, the smell of food trucks and hot asphalt in the air. A paper cup of black coffee steams in front of me. I take a sip. Bitter, clean, perfect. I'm alone. No emergency contacts, no family holidays, no calls to fix printers or pay rent. For decades, I thought this solitude would feel like punishment. I thought it meant I failed. Instead, I watched the sun sink behind the bridge and understand the truth. This is freedom. This is oxygen after years in a sealed room. I didn't just survive my family, I outgrew them. I built a life that fits me instead of storing their expectations. If this story resonated with you, like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share it with a friend who needs to hear it, and drop a comment with your perspective or the lesson you're taking from it.